Ndumeliso katina pathedzo kha vhaṱaleli vhoṱhe vha Heino podcast, Longa Khwanḓa podcast. Greetings and a blessing to all of you, my colleagues, the audience, subscribers who are watching, who are looking forward to another episode. This is today episode number 2. I uploaded the first episode last week and the reaction was amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for liking. Thank you so much for the comments. I appreciate it, and one can only grow from here with your support. I actually saw the very first comment. I remember Rati Lihubye, and I thought just the very first person to comment and like, specifically on TikTok. Thank you to everybody. And I think while I'm thanking everybody, I must just indicate that I've been thinking as to how do I address you. Do I address you as viewers, subscribers? But I thought the best will be just to refer you as colleagues, because we are going to grow this podcast together, and I believe that God will make it possible with your support, subscribing, liking, commenting, forwarding, resharing. This light that has just been started can only continue burning, lighting up South Africa with your support. Thank you. And on today's podcast, I'd like to talk about my journey. Just looking at the academic journey as it is. I think next week I'll speak about my spiritual journey. And on the last week of this month of January, I'll speak about my personal journey. And everything that I am sharing on this podcast, it's in the context of my academic journey. And it is also in the context that sharing all the challenges and everything that I have seen, everything that I've experienced on my academic journey is to set an example or show that I am an example of how a poor kid or a kid from a poor background can, through education, God can just use education for an example to eradicate that poverty. And as I indicated last week, the main objective is to use the UN SDGs 1 and 4 to eradicate poverty through education, and we need to come together, raise funds, just give a kid from a poor background an opportunity to set one foot adversity, and from there God will take care of the rest. I am believing God for this. It has been in my heart for a long time, and I thought if I don't start this year, I may never start. And I thank God that at the right time, He allowed it. He made it possible for me to start. Thank you once more for watching. Let me start now with my academic journey. Okay, so I am a 1985 kid. I'm born in March. I started school in 1991. I was 6 years old. And but just before I go into 1991, I just quickly have to give a background of what I mean when I speak about a kid from a poor background. Is that one of my childhood memories that I remember very well, among others. I've got a lot of childhood memories. Actually, I tend to be very fascinated about my own childhood memories. So one of my childhood memories is that in 1990, at home, there's a couple that came. I remember very vividly they were driving a Toyota Conquest hatchback at the time. And they came to hire my mother as a domestic worker. And I can tell you, for as long as I remember, my mother has been a domestic worker, and she even retired at the age of 65 as a domestic worker. But besides working as a domestic worker, she also worked at potato farms. And, she would come back with the potatoes that they were given after work. And I would actually take those potatoes to sell them. I would sell 4 potatoes for 1 rand. And my mother would usually come back late, and she would find me having cooked. In fact, I learned to cook pap using a size 2 3-legged pot. I'm sure you know those pots that they usually use at functions, weddings, funerals, on fire, wood fire. I learned to cook pap using that pot, and it was very early at my age. My mother would come back, find me having cooked pap, and she would cook the potatoes and gravy, and it pretty much became part of the staple that I grew up eating. So I think that's the first picture that I can provide in terms of the poor background that I come from. It wasn't really the poorest. There are people who are poorer than we were, but in the context of South Africa and how they define poverty, I grew up in a poor background. And so in 1991, that's when I started going to school, Matitibala Primary School, and I started at Sub A. And quite interestingly, in 1992, when I passed from Sub A in 1991 to 1992, I failed Sub A, and I had to repeat it in 1993. So I think just the very first time that one would taste failure was when I failed Sub B in 1992. And there is a context of why I failed. We'll talk about that in the next podcast. All right, so from Matitibala Primary School, I went to Muduluni Primary School doing standard 3 to standard 5. I think the context of sharing will be that I did standards until we started to do grades when I was in grade 10. So I will still speak about the standards. And interestingly enough, when I finished standard 5 at Muduluni Primary School, I received a certificate of cleanliness. Can you believe it? So apparently I was the cleanest kid at school that year. But there is an irony, and I think before we speak about the irony, let's just really give an applause for the fact that I got a certificate of cleanliness that year, most definitely. Yes. So that's what happened. But the irony is that when I went to receive that certificate of cleanliness, I unfortunately went barefoot. I didn't have shoes. So towards the end of my standard 5, I ended up not having shoes. My shoes got torn up. I think I might have had those shoes from standard 3 or something like that. I don't remember, but I know that day I went to collect that certificate without shoes. That's another context, or how to just to show how, or the fact that I grew up in a poor background. All right, so after Muduluni Primary School in 1999, I went to Kutama Secondary School, which is where then I got to matriculate in 1993. But before I could speak about finishing my basic education, I should highlight that when I was at Kutama Secondary School, I didn't carry lunch because of the poor background. I will also give you a context of why I ended up deciding not to take a lunchbox to school. So then at some point, one of my secondary teachers, Umrauzi, what a beautiful woman that raised me up at secondary, Miss Mrauzi, she noted that I would actually go to the toilet when it's lunchtime, and I would come back. And if someone would be monitoring what I'd be doing, I'd come back and then just read my Bible during lunchtime. And the day goes, and then I'd eat at home after the school is out. So she gave me pocket money, and it's something that I really, really appreciated so much. I'll tell you in the future podcast the context of the money that she gave me. I remember very vividly, I appreciated that money that she gave me for lunch. I ended up not even using it for lunch because I thought I would maybe use it for other things, which I will share with you probably later. So one can see that I grew up in a poor background from which God raised that kid to a point where through education one can provide or give a testimony to say, God has come through for me. So, and then after finishing grade 12 in 2003, I passed my matric in 2003 with a bachelor pass. I think nowadays they call it a bachelor pass. Back in our days, it was called with merit. Then I went to the University of Pretoria to study engineering. That is a Bachelor of Engineering. And believe it or not, it took me 9 years, a full 9 years to finish a 5 years degree. So when I go to varsity, there was a 4-year program and a 5-year program. The 4-year program was for the elite A students, and then the 5-year program was for us who came from the poor backgrounds. I used a mouse for the very first time at varsity. I used a computer for the very first time at varsity. And they also had a proficiency test that we had to write. I failed that proficiency test. In fact, someone who would have done English as their first language was not expected to do the proficiency test. But because I did English as my second language, I did the proficiency test and I failed it. And from there, they determined that I need to do the 5-year program. So throughout my journey, I ended up finishing in 9 years' time. It has been a journey, and it's a journey that I will share throughout this year, podcast by podcast, consistently so, bringing each story to life or alive and just trying to show my journey. Okay, so I eventually graduated in 2012. You must bear with me. I'm just summarizing because the journey is so long. There are bits and pieces that I will break down as we proceed with the podcast. And thank you for watching. And if you start with the journey, you are going to be immersed in this journey. And we will definitely finish the year together on this podcast with this journey. So, yeah, then I finished in 2012. Then I started working in 2013. The same year, 2013, I got a borehole at home for us to have water. And by the end of that year, I was starting to build my parents a house. In fact, the other thing that I must say is that, so I got a borehole, then I bought my first car, which was a buggy. That buggy, I used it to build my parents a house. And today, more than a decade later, I am a professional engineer who has got a vast experience. I am a high performer at work, and I'm just passionate about everything that I do. It comes from my heart. I'm just passionate. I'm just one person who does everything passionately, consistently, And I should say that one of my secrets of success in life is just being consistent. Consistency. And in fact, as you can see, I am wearing a marathon t-shirt. I am wearing a marathon t-shirt. We'll talk about this as we continue with the podcast. It's going to be a great podcast. It's going to be a great year. I'm believing God for what He has in store for us. All right, so I will tell you more about my university studies, funding, but the only important item which I think will become something that I say over and over again is that when I passed matric in 2003, going to varsity in 2004, from being from a poor background, I had no money to go to university, and there was God would probably have made a way the same way that He did, but I just had no money. So fortunately, the Makhado municipality somehow they started a program to give money to students that are going to study engineering. They were actually targeting electrical engineering that time, but I was going to do electronic engineering. So because they are in the same field, they gave me money. So they gave me 15,000 rand, which is the money that I used to register. And by God's grace, that is all I wanted. You know, like I said about Longa Khwanḓa, is that sometimes you just need one foot in. I just got one foot into varsity. No matter what challenges were there, all I needed was to just set one foot in. And it is the objective of this podcast, it is the objective of Longa Khwanḓa NPC to replicate what God did in my life, to extend the grace that God has shown me in my life to other kids from poor background. So that is how my university was funded the first time. The registration fee, the money to just get confidence that I'm in, I got it from the Makhado municipality. And interestingly enough, so 2004, I got 15,000 from Makhado municipality. The balance was paid by NSFAS. And that's why I said even last time that this idea of Longa Khwanḓa NPC, it is not to replace any government structure, NSFAS, whatever. No, it is just to assist the government to provide more opportunities to, especially with experience that I have. I believe God is going to do it, and He did it for me so that we can have lessons, so that we can replicate this. So the balance was paid by NSFAS in 2004. In 2005, listen to this. In 2005, I went back to school. My grades were actually still the best at the time. And then I got 28,000 Rand from Tshwane Metro municipality. You know, recently there's been a lot of mayors changing at Tshwane Metro, political landscape. Every time I would actually listen to these stories of the different mayors changing, I would always remember Tshwane municipality or Tshwane Metro in 2005. They paid all my fees, 28,000 Rand. No strings attached. It was just a once off. They put an advert on our University of Pretoria engineering website. I took a chance. I submitted whatever they wanted, and they paid. So for the very first 2 years of my journey at the university, I was just seeing God coming through financially. And I will tell you more about the whole journey. Today is just a summary. So from there, I got a bursary in 2006 through 2008. I lost, unfortunately, that bursary because I had now started to fail. And as you know, it is where the cracks of my challenges were starting to happen, as I will tell you in the future podcast. And I think that's about what I want to share about my academic journey up to the point where I graduated. And it has just been such a journey. And having been that kid who grew up in a poor background, God came through for me. From the beginning, I could just see that it is God at work. Even the challenges that I had, when I look back, I can see it was God at work. When I started to work as well, just trying to change the setup, building my parents a house, and just changing the whole background. It has been an amazing journey. And I know there are still kids that are from poor backgrounds. I mean, when we hear the statistics, South Africa is still having sheer poverty. So we still want the same strategy to be replicated. We still want the same journey, to be replicated. We just need to give someone the opportunity to start, and God will take care of the rest. And I think that's about it. Eradicating poverty through education, SDG 1 and 4. I still have a lot more to say about my journey. But for now, that has been a summary. And once more, thank you for watching episode 2. I will do episode 3 and speak about my spiritual journey and summarize it the way that I did now. And then I will do episode 4 about my personal journey, personal stuff that has happened through my academic journey. I will share that as well. And that is what I have for this month of January. And for today, that will be all. Thank you for watching, colleagues. My name is Pumudzo Amopatuchezwa, the Blessed One. Ndivo Rachitanga Bebwele, Mr. BBL to you. Bye-bye.